Vancouver was such an interesting person. She came up in a time when before it was okay to be a strong feminist. And maybe she would not have ever done that anyway. But she was such an interesting person. She was a very gentle person. She grew up most of her childhood in Ohio, and she had a really difficult family of some sort, and she found her peace and her hope and her action and her solace in her troubled childhood with roaming around outside in nature and learning how to sit for hours and watch and see what the little toad does and those nice things. So she became, through nature and in her life, this wonderful, patient, loving person. And I actually was lucky enough, I met her one time. I didn't know until a little bit later who it was I met. Sounds kind of silly, but it was in the mid-90s, and I was in Vermont visiting my daughter who was in college, and I went into a bookstore, just, you know, my daughter was doing something else, and I'm having fun in a bookstore. What's not to have fun in a bookstore? And so I'm in the poetry section as usual, and this lady's there reading books, and I've always been a Whitman fan. That was my first love as a young child, was Whitman. And so I pulled the Whitman book off the shelf, and this lady started talking to me, and she said, "Do you like Whitman?" "I really love Whitman." And I said, "I do. I've always loved Whitman." And she said, "Well, my name is Mary. What's your name?" And I said, "Well, Cathie." And I didn't know that she was a famous person already. I didn't know anything. I just was a person reading Whitman. And although I'd been writing poetry a long time, I didn't know a lot about current, what I would call more modern poets, at least contemporary poets. And so we just chatted a little while about our admiration for Walt Whitman and admiration for nature. And so later, I saw her picture somewhere. I was like, "Oh, that's the woman I met in the bookstore." I was surprised. So she was a really humble, sweet lady. That's all I can say. She was taller than me, but everybody is. That's a separate problem. Okay, so she has a collection of essays that I really like. And I'm sorry, David, I do not know if we have this in the store, but it's called Upstream. Do we have this? I don't know. But it's really nice. It's a collection of essays. And I'm just going to read you a little bit from this one before I read some poems. But first and foremost, I learned from Whitman that the poem is a temple, or a green field, a place to enter, and in which to feel. Only in a secondary way is it an intellectual thing, an artifact, a moment of seemly and robust wordiness, wonderful as that part of it is. I learned that a poem was made not just to exist, but to speak, to be company. It was everything that was needed when everything was needed. I remember the delicate trampled way into the woods and the weight of the books on my pack. I remember the rambling and the loafing and the wonderful days when, with Whitman, I tucked my trouser ends in my boots and went and had a good time. This is a really wonderful book. I highly recommend it. It is essays that she wrote about her experiences in life and how she feels about poetry and about nature. It's a really nice book. Okay, whoops. This is This is a poem called 40 Years. It's from her New and Selected Poems, Volume 2. So this is like after the mid-90s. So in the period where I actually met her. And she was putting all those things together. 40 years. For 40 years, the sheets of white paper have passed under my hands, and I have tried to improve their peaceful emptiness, putting down little curls, little shafts of letters, words, little flames leaping. Not one page was less to me than fascinating discursive full of cadence, its pale nerves hiding in the curves of the Q's behind the soldierly H's and the webbed feet of the W's. 40 years. And again this morning, as always, I am stopped as the world comes back. Wet and beautiful, I am thinking that language is not even a river, is not a tree, not a green field, not even a black ant traveling briskly, modestly, from day to day, from one golden page to another. I've always liked mockingbirds. I know, so I don't know if any of you read the Hunger Games series, and so I don't know if you did, the Mockingjay with the bird in there. So us dystopian fans would have read that. But this is a book by, a poem by Mary Oliver called Mockingbirds. And if you're not familiar with mockingbirds, look them up and listen online to their sounds, as varied as they are. This morning, 2 mockingbirds in the green field were spinning and tossing the white ribbons of their songs into the air. I had nothing better to do than to listen. I mean this seriously. In Greece, a long time ago, an old couple opened their door to 2 strangers, who were, it soon appeared, not men at all, but gods. It is my favorite story, how the old couple had almost nothing to give, but their willingness to be attentive, and for this alone the gods loved them and blessed them. When the gods rose out of their mortal bodies, like a million particles of water from a fountain, the light swept into all the corners of the cottage, and the old couple, shaken with understanding, bowed down, but still they asked for nothing beyond the difficult life which they had already. And the gods smiled as they vanished, clapping their great wings. Wherever it was I was supposed to be this morning, whatever it was I said I would be doing, I was standing at the edge of the field. I was hurrying through my own soul, opening its dark doors. I was leaning out. I was listening. One more from this book, which it's just beautiful and rich. I don't quite understand this poem, so maybe you will. I'm reading it because I don't quite get it. And if my southern accent creeps in, I apologize. The name of the poem is in Pobitty, Georgia. 3 women climb from the car in which they have driven slowly into the churchyard. They come toward us to see what we're doing. What we're doing is reading the strange, wonderful names of the dead. One of the women speaks to us after we speak to her. She walks with us and shows us with downward thrust finger which of the dead were her people. She tells us about 2 brothers and an argument and a gun, and she points to one of the slabs on which there is a name, some scripture, a handful of red plastic flowers. We ask her about the other brother. Chain gang, she says, or as you might say, in Des Moines or New Haven. Then, look around all you want. The young woman stands back in the stiff reeds, like a banked fire. The 3rd one, the oldest human being we've ever seen in our lives, suddenly drops to the dirt and begins to cry. Clearly she is blind, and clearly she cannot rise, but they lift her like a child and lead her away across the graves, as though, as old as anything could ever be, she was finally perfectly finished, perfectly heartbroken, perfectly wild. We get a sense from this of what a wide range. She is known for all of her beauty and discovery and patience with nature, and people talk about that a lot, and like on the internet this whole past few weeks has been the whole discussion about wild geese, her poem, her famous poem Wild Geese, which is a wonderful poem. If you haven't read it, I highly recommend it, and there are many others. But she is such has such a wide range, and I think I have one more. Oh, another good book. Well, I'm not going to read from it. It's a poem-length book. It's called The Leaf and the Cloud. Okay, now this one, I wanted to give you a smattering of what a broad range she has, what a beauty, her beauty for finding language and sharing language with others and bringing people to language that perhaps don't even know language of any kind, past what they have to get along. This one from Volume 1, New and Selected Poems, is called Sunrise. You can die for it, an idea or the world. People have done so brilliantly, letting their small bodies be bound to the stake, creating an unforgettable fury of light. But this morning, climbing the familiar hills in the familiar fabric of dawn, I thought of China and India and Europe, and I thought how the sun blazes for everyone just so joyfully as it rises under the lashes of my own eyes. And I thought, I am so many. What is my name? What is the name of the deep breath that I would take over and over for all of us? Call it whatever you want. It is happiness. It is another one of the ways to enter fire.